Girl Scouts. Welcome. Thank you for joining me in this two-part series on how to bake a pumpkin pie from scratch. Scratch? What is scratch? Well, scratch is the basic ingredients of anything you make when you're baking it. For instance, a pumpkin pie, we're going to use a real pumpkin. Not your jack-o'-lantern, a pumpkin that's from the store that's whole. If you cut into it, you might have put some bacteria in there and you don't want to do that. So get a pumpkin that hasn't been cut. We're also going to not make it from a can. Now that's perfectly fine if you want to, but it's better if you have a pumpkin and you're cooking it yourself. That way you're using the whole ingredients. And flour, sugar, butter, all of that to make your crust and your pumpkin pie. So join me. Let's get started. Very first thing when you're starting to cook is you need to wash your hands. Don't forget to wash the pumpkin too. Now we're here. We have our pumpkin. First thing you want to do is break off that stem. Now we're going to cut it in half. It doesn't matter if you cut it this way or this way. You just want to cut it. Jab it in and just slide it down. And then do the same on the other side so that it splits right in half, like that. Now you see all these seeds? We're gonna take those out and just set them aside. If you really like roasted pumpkin seeds, you can do that later. Roast them in the oven after you've baked your pie, and that way you'll have some pumpkin seeds to chomp on, just like that. Do it on the other half. It's kind of sticky and it'll feel kind of slimy, but that's okay. Use a spoon to scrape out all the little fibers from the inside of your pumpkin, just like that. So if you have some in there, that's fine. You're gonna bake that. Now, we're going to turn the oven on to 350 degrees. Every oven is different, so check with your mom if you're using a different oven that you're not used to. Just make sure you know how to do it. This one's new for me. Bake, 350, turn on, it's preheating. That's pretty easy. Now we're going to take a cookie sheet about this size and put some foil on it. That's to keep it from sticking. So we take that, line the bottom of the cookie sheet. There will be juices from the pumpkin, so you want to make sure there's an edge on that. Don't use a flat one. Turn it upside down like this. See? And when your oven's preheated, you're going to put it right into the oven and bake it for about 45 to 50 minutes. That will get it nice and soft and able to scrape it out of the pumpkin. So let's put it in. Right like that. If you have a timer, go ahead and set that for 45 minutes and we'll come back and check on that. So let's get started on our pie crust. First, we're going to need a pie pan set aside. You can use a metal one or a glass one, whatever's convenient. I happen to like glass just because it's a little bit bigger and you can see what's going on. But either way, it's fine. So first, you want to take 2 cups of flour. The recipe calls for 3, and that's because you're going to need another cup to roll it out. Now I always like to sift my flour just to make sure it's nice and fluffy. So once I fill this up, it's 1, 2. This is a sifter. It's a very old sifter. I think it was my grandmother's, but you can still get them in the store. The very same thing. I think the same company still makes them. Anyway, they're only a couple dollars, so, and it sifts your flour so it's nice and fluffy. But first I'm just going to take a little bit of salt, not a lot, about a teaspoon, about that much, and throw it in there. Then we're going to sift it. See how fluffy that gets? So that's 2 cups of sifted flour with some salt. Then we're going to take a cube of butter and cut it into little pieces. Make sure your butter is cold. So take it right out of the refrigerator. If it doesn't seem cold, put it in the freezer for a little bit and let it harden up. It won't take very long. I happen to have a butter cutter. I love this because it cuts my butter fairly easily. First, we're gonna put it down like that and just slide it down. And then we can even slice it this way. Now that butter is in lots of little pieces, and we're just gonna break it up into our flour. Now, if you have a dough cutter which cuts butter into the flour, you can use that. It's a little presser, but I just like to use my hands. So we're just going to get right in there and just start squishing that flour in with the butter, and we just keep going until it gets crumbly. Okay, so once we get it all crumbly like this, we're going to add just a tad of water. Now, you don't want to add a whole bunch, so take a little glass and just take a teaspoon or a tablespoon like this and just kind of sprinkle it in there, maybe a little bit more for this batch. Not a lot. And then you're just going to start mushing it up again and keep going until it balls up into a ball. And you can see how it's starting to pull together like that. It's still a little crumbly, so once again, a little bit more water. Don't get crazy with your water, because you want a flaky crust, and what's going to make it fluffy is that cold butter. See how it's coming together? So we're just about there. Now we're going to take all that out and roll it out into a big circle. I like using a Silpat. It's just a non-stick pad that has the circles already on it. If you have a cutting board or something like that, that works too. It's fine. So whatever you have right now is just fine. Sprinkle some flour on it and then spread it around right where you're going to be rolling. Then take your flaky crust and set it right on there. If there's a little bit left, just push it right there. Then, rolling pin, a little bit of flour right on the rolling pin so nothing sticks, right? It's got a lot of butter in it, so it shouldn't. Then we're just gonna press down and just start rolling. If yours starts to stick on there, just get a little bit more flour and rub it on there. Once we get it out to about 12 or so inches, about that far, because here's our pie plate, so that's pretty good. Then you can take a spatula or a flat knife, something like that, just slide it underneath to loosen it up just a little bit. Then, that's the nice thing about the Silpat, is it will just let go. Then press it in. Now we're not going to bake this before we fill it. We're just going to chill it. So once you get the dough all on there, use up your little scraps around the edges. Then we're going to make a fancy edge. So you just start taking some of this extra dough and pinching it onto the side. See? And then if you take your fingers like this is the fancy part, and just make a little pinch, you can make the crust edge go around. Okay, so once you get your decoration around the edge, you've pinched it all in there so that it has a little ripple effect, your crust is done. And we are going to chill it. Now you could chill this for a few days. So if you want to make this before Thanksgiving or a holiday, just put it in the refrigerator and let it chill. Then when you're ready to fill it. And then we'll get back to that baked pumpkin that's in the oven. Okay, so now we're ready to get the pumpkin out of the oven. It's going to be very hot. Make sure you have some help. Let's check it with a fork. There it is. And see if we can poke through. See how I can poke through the skin like that? That means it's nice and cooked. So it's ready to come out. We'll just take it and leave it there until it cools and we're able to touch it. And then we'll come back to it. Okay, so our pumpkin has cooled, at least a little bit, enough to be able to touch it and put it around. See how it's nice and toasty around there? We're just gonna pull away some of that pumpkin and just shred it either with a fork or a spoon. Then we'll put it in a bowl. And just scoop it out. You know, a pumpkin is just a squash that's a little bit sweeter than other squashes. So that's why we like to use it in a pie. Okay, so we've scooped out quite a bit there. We only need 2 cups. So we're going to save some of this. And the extra, we're gonna put in the freezer and save it for winter time, and we can make pumpkin soup. See how much we're getting? It's a lot. So we're going to save 2 cups of our pumpkin for our pie. Right there. Perfect. And then the rest of it, we can put in a freezer bag and freeze it until we need it. And that will go right in there. All right, that's the end of our session 1. When we come back for part 2, we'll put this whole pie together using our pumpkin ingredients, some spices, some cream, some more butter, so on and so forth, and bake that pie. So let's take a break. Like I said, it could be a couple days from now, it could be right after this. So pause your machine, and when you're ready, come back for part 2, and we'll fill that pie crust with pumpkin and cook it in the oven. All right.